Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Ma'am Jovi G. Martin. First and foremost, I would like to apologize for this late upload. The reason for that is I had a hard time acquiring all the resources to come up with this presentation, and I had limited time to prepare since I am working in my internship. Sincerely, I am so sorry. But without further ado, let's discuss the final topics in capital market. By the way, my name is Ken Francis D. Maglantay, BSBA student, fourth year student, major in financial management. So, our final topics in capital market are first, mergers and acquisition, second, investment banks, and third, portfolio management. Mergers and acquisition. The term mergers and acquisition refers to the consolidation of companies or their major business assets through financial transactions between companies. A company may purchase and absorb another company outright, merge it to create new company, acquire some of all of its major assets, make a tender offer for its stocks, or stage a hostile takeover. When one company takes over another and establishes itself as the new owner, the purchase is called an acquisition. On the other hand, a merger describes two firms of approximately the same size that join forces to move forward as a single new entity rather than remain separately owned and operated. So what are the types of mergers and acquisitions? The types of mergers and acquisitions are horizontal merger, vertical merger, and conglomerate merger. In horizontal merger occurs when two companies operating in the same market come together to dominate market share. This type is attractive for merging companies aiming to build economies of scale and decrease market competition. However, there are potential downsides. A horizontal merger comes with increased regulatory scrutiny and stringency, and can lead to a loss of value if the post-merger integration is not fully realized. Regulatory due diligence should be executed with extra special care. An example of a horizontal merger might be if McDonald's and Burger King join forces. Next is vertical merger. Vertical mergers involve two companies in the same industry who operate in different stages of production. This could involve a retailer who merges with a wholesaler, or a wholesaler merging with a manufacturer. For example, this type of merger deal for streamlining operations, boosting efficiencies, and cutting costs across the supply chain. But it can also reduce flexibility and result in new complexities for the business to manage. A well-known example of a vertical merger is the deal between eBay and PayPal. Conglomerate merger. Unlike the aforementioned types of merger, a conglomerate merger occurs between two companies whose business activities and industries may be completely unrelated. In pure conglomerate mergers, the two firms may continue to operate separately within their own markets, whereas in a mixed one, they may look to expand product or market share. While this type of merger can help the new entity increase market share and diversify its business, it can be especially challenging to integrate the similar companies, raising the risk of culture clashes and lost efficiency due to disrupted business operations. An example of a conglomerate merger is Mars, a chocolate bar company, and Wrigley's, a chewing gum company. Strategic rationale. Companies pursue mergers and acquisition for several reasons. The most common motives for mergers includes the following: value creation, diversification, asset acquisition, tax purposes, incentives for managers, and increase in financial capacity. Value creation. Two companies may undertake a merger to increase the wealth of their shareholders. Generally, the consolidation of two businesses results in synergies that increase the value of a newly created business entity. Revenue synergies. Synergies that primarily improve the company's revenue generating ability. For example, market expansion, product diversification, and R&D activities are only a few factors that can create revenue synergies. Cost synergies, synergies that reduce the company's cost structure. Generally, a successful merger may result in economies of scale, access to new technologies, and even elimination of certain costs. Diversification. Mergers are frequently undertaken for diversification reasons. For example, a company may use a merger to diversify its business operations by entering into new markets or offering new products or services. Additionally, it is common that the managers of a company may arrange a merger deal to diversify risks relating to the company's operations. Assets acquisition. A merger can be motivated by a desire to acquire certain assets that cannot be obtained using other methods. In mergers and acquisition transactions, it is quite common that some companies may arrange mergers to gain access to assets that are unique or to assets that are usually take a long time to develop internally. For example, access to new technologies is a frequent objective in many mergers. Increase in financial capacity. Every company faces a maximum financial capacity to finance its operations through either debt or equity markets. Lacking adequate financial capacity, a company may merge with another. As a result, a consolidated entity will secure a higher financial capacity that can be employed in further business development processes. Tax purposes. If a company generates significant taxable income, it can merge with a company with substantial carry-forward tax losses. After the merger, the total tax liability of the consolidated company will be much lower than the tax liability of the independent company. Incentives for managers. Sometimes, mergers are primarily motivated by the personal interests and goals of the top management of a company. For example, a company created as a result of a merger guarantees more power and prestige that can be viewed favorably by managers. Such a motive can also be reinforced by the manager's ego, as well as their intention to build the biggest company in the industry in terms of size. Such a phenomenon can be referred to as empire building. This happens when the managers or a company start favoring the size of company more than its actual performance. In summary, the idea why there are these types of strategies in business was mainly to make more profit, to expand power, and to save a company which could be in the verge of bankruptcy. Mergers and acquisition are business tools used to hedge inevitable fall down of a company. For example, Company A is doing a bad job this fiscal year and their total debt overwhelmed its capital. Their total sales can cover their total debt with an enormous 150% sales to debt ratio, which means they must double their productivity and sales to pay off their debt, which is logically hard enough for a dying company to pursue. Now, the constant thing is that Company A is at the verge of collapsing, and soon the bank will take all its assets. And they built take and all their property may be taken that they have built for many years. On the other hand, Company B is competitor and the bigger company is performing well in the market and has an amazing 20% sales to debt ratio. In order to save the company and the legacy of Company A, they can offer everything to Company B. After a good talk, Company B acquired Company A, pay all its debt, and help them get back on track not as a competitor but as one with Company B. Just like that, Company B expanded its power by acquiring his competitor, and Company A, under the umbrella of Company B, get to live for another day. So what are the keys involved in mergers and acquisition process? The five-step mergers and acquisition process. First, preliminary discussions and non-disclosure agreements. The first step in the M&A process is usually high-level discussions between potential buyers and sellers. This is an exploratory stage where companies have the chance to discuss how they might fit together, whether they are aligned on values, and what synergies could be realized by uniting. Before moving forward with the sharing of more sensitive information, it's best practice for non-disclosure agreements to be executed to ensure prospective buyers aren't able to use this confidential information for private gain. Assessment and evaluation of target. In a mergers and acquisition deal, the deal team needs to identify and assess all material risks and issues an interested buyer might find during the sale process, or alternatively, evaluate all these risks in the target company if they are on the buy side. The deal team's first step is to prepare an assessment of the market. If buyers are unfamiliar with the market, they need help understanding the business and its position in the market. Secondly, they need to undertake a strategic assessment of the business. They must be able to present a convincing management plan to potential buyers on how the critical business objectives will be achieved. Thirdly, the deal team must ensure there are audited historic financial reports available for examination by the potential buyers. Buyers will want to see financial forecasts along with past and future financial models in order to provide a valuation of the target company. The deal team will also need to get together an information memorandum, a detailed document on the business that summarizes the company's financial and business position along with its key selling messages. Due diligence. Due diligence is a critical point in the M&A process. Data rooms are where companies, their advisors, their potential bidders can access documents securely and safely via the internet from anywhere in the world. A virtual data room is the safest way for companies and deal teams to secure managed deal documents and other important company information. It enables buy-side teams to carefully go through and review and verify all these documents in a structured and controlled manner. Due diligence, question and answer is a significant aspect of the stage, providing a crucial opportunity for all questions to be answered and issues to be resolved within the data room before moving ahead with the deal. Signing the contract and closing the deal. Provided that there are no unwelcome surprises in the due diligence phase, the two companies will sign the final contracts and finalize the transaction. There may be a pre-closing period between signing and closing, where final actions are taken to satisfy all closing conditions. Once all these conditions have been met, Funds are exchanged to mark the official closing of the deal. Post-deal integration. Once the deal is closed, the full-scale integration of the acquired company can begin. This is the final step in the M&A process, as this can be equally intensive to the execution of the transaction itself. It is important that the post-deal integration strategy is developed early and considered alongside the due diligence process. Let's move on to our next topic, investment banking. Investment banks facilitate flows or funds and allocations of capital. Just like the bank, for bankers, they are financial intermediaries, the critical link between users and providers of capital. So what are the rules of investment bank? So the rules of investment bank are as underwriter, as financial advisor, and it has it has a big impact in mergers and acquisition. Investment bank rule as a underwriter. One of the primary roles of an investment bank is to serve as a sort of intermediary between corporations and investors through initial public offerings. Investment banks provide underwriting services for new stock issues when a company decides to go public and seek equity funding. Underwriting basically involves the investment bank purchasing an agreed upon number of shares of the new stock, which it which it then sells through a stock exchange. Role as a financial advisor. Investment bankers act in several different advisory capacities for their clients. In addition to handling IPOs, investment banks offer corporations advice on taking the company public or raising capital through alternative means. Investment banks regularly advise their clients on all aspects of financing. Role in merger and acquisition. Handling mergers and acquisitions is a major function of investment bankers. As with IPOs, one of the main areas of expertise for an investment bank is its ability to evaluate the worth of possible acquisition and arrive at a fair price. An investment bank can also help structure and facilitate the acquisition to make the deal go as smoothly as possible. Different financial products and services. Full service investment banks offer a wide range of services that include underwriting, M&A, sales and trading, equity research, asset management, commercial banking, and retail banking. The investment banking divisions of a bank provide only the underwriting and M&A advisory services. Full service bank services underwriting, mergers and acquisition, sales and trading, equity research, and asset management. Valuation techniques for M&A transactions. Valuation techniques for M&A transactions. In an M&A transaction, the valuation process is conducted by the acquirer, as well as the target. The acquirer will want to purchase the target at the lowest price, while the target will want the highest price. Thus, valuation is an important part of mergers and acquisition, as it guides the buyer and seller to reach the final transaction price. Below are three major valuation methods that are used to value the target. Discounted cash flow method. The target's value is calculated based on its future cash flows. Comparable company analysis. Relative valuation metrics for public companies are used to determine the value of the target. Comparable transaction analysis. Valuation metrics for past comparable transactions in the industry are used to determine the value of the target. The next topic is portfolio management. Portfolio management's meaning can be explained as the process of managing individuals' investment so that they maximize their earnings within a given time horizon. Furthermore, such practices ensure that the capital invested by individuals is not exposed to too much market risk. The entire process is based on the ability to make sound decisions. Typically, such a decision relates to achieving a profitable investment mix, allocating assets as per risk and financial goals, and diversifying resources to combat capital erosion. Primarily, portfolio management serves as a SWOT analysis of different investment avenues with investors' goals against their risk appetite. In turn, it helps to generate substantial earnings and protect such earnings against risk. Portfolio management process. The portfolio management process consists of a series of essential steps, each contributing to the success of the overall investment strategy. Setting goals, selection of backup assets, developing a strategy, conducting a security analysis, acting according to plans, portfolio modification, and assessing returns. Setting goals. The first step involves the identification of an investor's risk-return profile as central to establishing investment objectives. It requires creating a suitable portfolio approach that will generate desired returns while taking reasonable risks. It is essential to determine the amount of risk the investor is likely to take and the degree to which they are ready to bear in terms of volatility. After establishing a desired risk-return profile, benchmarks can be set in order to track the performance of the portfolio, as tracking the portfolio's performance against benchmark allows smaller adjustments to be made along the way. Selection of backup assets. The subsequent step in portfolio management involves assessing other potential alternative assets, which can aid in the diversification of risk as well as the reduction of losses. All this step of the operation defines that there is an explicit link between the securities. Portfolios can include preference shares, equity shares, bonds, and other securities. However, investing these portfolios depends on the investor's risk-taking ability and capital available for investment. Developing a strategy. The next step involves generating suitable portfolio strategies from an asset mix after the portfolio management process has chosen an acceptable portfolio strategy. A portfolio strategy is developed in two ways: active and passive. Active portfolio strategy. An active portfolio strategy uses market timing, moving from one sector to another based on market conditions, security selection, or a combination of these to generate a higher risk adjusted return. Meanwhile, passive portfolio strategy approach has a predetermined level of risk involvement and thus it will balance and properly plan. Thing as security analysis. The investor is directly involved in picking up stocks during this phase. Security analysis requires an informational background of the sources on which it operates. The price potential return and risks connected with the securities in the portfolio are all considered. Security analysis aids in understanding the type and amount of risk connected with a specific security in the market, as the return on investment is tied to the risk associated with the security. Micro and macro analysis are both used in security analysis. Microanalysis, for example, involves studying a single script. Macroanalysis, on the other hand, is the study of the securities market. Fundamental analysis and technical analysis aid in the identification of assets that can be included in an investor's portfolio. Thing according to plans. Once they have selected the securities in which to invest, the next step of the portfolio management process involves putting their portfolio plan into practice. For example, portfolio execution. Portfolio execution involves buying and selling certain assets in fixed sums at predefined intervals. It is one of the most important stages of portfolio management because it influences the results of investments. Modification. It is one of the most vital stages of portfolio management. Portfolio managers always evaluate and scrutinize the script in the line with market situations. After completion of evaluation, portfolio modification involves altering a program or changing from one stock to another, stock to bond, and vice versa. Assessing returns. In this phase, the performance of the portfolio is assessed over the stipulated period concerning the quantitative measurement of the return obtained and risk involved in the portfolio for the whole term of the investment. Asset classes. In the financial markets, the term asset class refers to the different categories of available investment, such as stocks, bonds, or real estate. Within an asset class, the available products generally share common characteristics and behaviors, and are often governed by the same laws and regulations. Different types of asset class in- includes stocks. This represents ownership in companies. Bonds. Bonds are debt securities. Investors lend money to governments, corporations, or entities in exchange for periodic interest payments and the return of the principal amount of maturity. Cash or cash equivalents. These are highly liquid, low-risk investments including cash, money market funds, and treasury bills. Real estate. Real estate investments involve owning physical properties or real estate-related securities, such as real estate investment trusts or REITs. Real estate can provide rental income and the potential for appreciation. Commodities. Commodities are physical goods like gold, oil, and agricultural products. Alternative investments. This category includes a wide range of non-traditional investments like hedge funds, private equity, venture capital, and more. Currencies and foreign exchange. Currencies are another type of asset class. Currency traders exchange one currency for another in hopes of making money on the appreciation of a given currency. Digital assets. Digital assets include cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and Ethereum, and other blockchain-based tokens such as non-fungible tokens or NFTs. Derivatives. Derivatives are financial contracts that derive their value from an underlying asset or index. Options. Options provide the holder with the right to buy or sell an underlying asset at a specific price before or on a specified expiration date. Futures. Future contracts represent agreements to buy or sell an underlying asset at a predetermined price and date in the future. Investment vehicles. An investment vehicle is a product used by investors to gain positive returns. Investment vehicles can be low risk, such as certificates of deposits or bonds, or they can carry greater degree of risk, such as stocks, options, and futures. The most common types of investment vehicles are mutual funds and ETFs or exchange traded funds. ETF or exchange traded fund. An exchange traded fund is a pooled investment security that can be bought and sold like an individual stock. ETFs can be structured to track anything from the price of a commodity to a large, diverse collection of securities. Mutual funds, on the other hand, are pooled investments managed by professional money managers. They trade on exchanges and provide investors with access to a wide mix of assets selected for the fund. A professional fund manager handles this mix of investment, and the fund's assets and goals are detailed in the prospectus. ETF versus mutual funds. How they are managed. While they can be actively or passively managed by fund managers, most ETFs are passive investments pegged to the performance of a particular index. On the other side, mutual funds come in both active and index varieties, but most are actively managed and active mutual funds are managed by fund managers. How are they traded? ETFs trade like stocks, are bought and sold on a stock exchange, experiencing price changes throughout the day. This means that the price at which you buy an ETF will likely differ from the prices paid by other investors. Mutual fund orders are executed once per day, with all investors on the same day receiving the same price. What's the minimum? Because they trade like stocks, ETFs do not require a minimum initial investment and are purchased as whole shares. You can buy ETF for the price of just one share, usually referred to as the ETF's market price. On the other hand, mutual fund minimum initial investments for mutual funds are normally a flat dollar amount and aren't based on the fund's share price. Unlike ETFs, mutual funds can be purchased in fractional shares or fixed dollar amounts. And that is all for our topics and the final topics for capital market. Thank you for listening and have a good day.